Welcome everyone to this new edition of our holographic podcast or HoloChat. And today my guest is Brad Neese. He's the acting director of procurement at the NASA Johnson Space Center. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Fernando. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So, Brad, can you describe the primary responsibilities of the procurement division at the Johnson Space Center?
Yeah, sure thing. So, JSC, NASA Johnson Space Center, we've got an amazing mission here. NASA as an agency, we have an amazing mission. And as an agency, 85% of NASA's budget flows through procurement. And what that means is we use a lot of our industry commercial partners. We have contracts with them to accomplish the objectives of the agency. So 85% of our agency budget goes through procurement. And so what we do here at the Johnson Space Center is we partner with our programs and the center to get contracts put in place to accomplish the missions we're charged to go do for the agency. And so we have some amazing missions here at the center that we're supporting with the Artemis Moon to Mars program, with the ISS International Space Station, and the Future Commercial Low Earth Orbit Development Program, amongst some other amazing things with the astronauts and the Human Research Program. So we get to support an incredible mission here. And in procurement, we spent last year close to $4.7 billion through the doors of procurement, through our office here, to make the center successful in our mission for the agency.
Moon, Mars, and beyond. How does the procurement division support NASA's mission of leading space exploration?
So, it kind of gets back to 85% of our budget goes to our contractors to help us accomplish our mission, right? And so our contractor counterparts play a vital role in us advancing our exploration goals, right? And so that's what procurement does, is we partner with our programs to figure out how to go craft contract solutions to advance the mission of exploration. So, and it's broad, it's diverse, and it's exciting.
Wow. What are key factors considered when developing procurement strategies for a space mission?
A great question and challenging question, because it depends, right? There's so much that goes into it. So acquisition strategy is vitally important considering how we accomplish our mission at the agency. So we want to make sure we get it right. A lot of it starts with the requirements. So partnering with our programs to ensure we understand what their objectives are. What is it we need to accomplish as an agency with that acquisition? And then we get into some discussions such as make or buy, right? That's kind of a high level. Are we going to develop and own the hardware, or are we going to let the commercial provider own it and we kind of go into more of a service model where we're buying services from that provider, right? So some of those key things, it's all about the objectives of our program and the agency. How do we want to go accomplish a mission, a particular mission? So it gets to the requirements. What are the driving requirements, and then the strategy on what is the most efficient, effective way to accomplish those requirements. Clearly budget is always an issue, right? We got to make sure we're doing things within budgets. We got to make sure we're setting things up to be the most economical and efficient way to get our services or our hardware delivered. So those are the conversations we have internally. And then a really key contributor to procurement strategy or acquisition strategy is industry feedback. So our procurement process, we're very open and collaborative with our industry partners because, again, it goes back to 85% of our budget is through our contracts to get NASA's mission accomplished. And so we need to make sure we're getting feedback from our industry partners on what we're thinking, get those great ideas from industry on how do we make true win-win acquisition strategies that are good for business and good for the agency. And so industry collaboration and feedback is a huge part of our acquisition strategy development as well.
Wow, that's very good. How do you ensure that procurement processes are aligned with the technological advancements of space exploration?
Yeah, great question. technology. As a procurement guy, right, I'm not a technical guy. So it gets to the requirements of our tech orgs, right? But we leverage again heavily on our industry counterparts, right? So our procurement process, we're asking industry, what is the latest state of the art that we could incorporate into our requirement set to make sure we're capitalizing on innovation where we can. A lot of our contracts are performance-based contracts where we try to keep the requirements set in a manner that industry, our contractor partners, can actually go innovate on their own to achieve our objectives. So we try to keep them flexible and open to where industry, our contractor counterparts, can go do good things and try to incentivize performance accordingly. And so leveraging industry and the ingenuity that exists within the marketplace, because technology is moving so fast, so it's that collaboration that makes us successful.
That makes perfect sense. What are the most significant challenges that you face or your division, the procurement division faces, and how do you address those challenges?
Yeah. I mean, it's a wonderful problem. I mean, we have a bigger mission here at the Johnson Space Center than we've had. I've been here 21 years, and we're busier today than we've ever been with the Moon to Mars program, with the ISS LEO development programs, amongst everything else. So we got more work than people to do it, right? That's a common problem for everybody, right? We have resources, and how do we effectively get our mission accomplished with limited resources? And so, as the director, acting director of procurement, right, we do a lot here. We have 130 civil servant contracting officer contract specialists to go do JSC's procurement mission. And it's still not enough, right, to do all of the work that we have to do. So how do we, and then couple that with coming out of COVID, right, the world, we went through a lot of attrition, right, and a lot of turnover and things like that. So how do we effectively hire, really great people? How do we train them to the JSC and the NASA culture and how we do business, and how do we partner with our customers in this hybrid environment we find ourselves in, right? We're in person a lot, but there's still a lot of flexibility. And so how do we ensure we keep those relationships and partnerships with our programs to be effective in this procurement mission? So it's really more of a human capital challenge, I view, from the procurement knothole, is making sure we're deploying the right human capital for our mission set here at the center. And so we've got a great group of folks that we're making it work. But that's really my biggest challenge, is making sure we're keeping that pipeline of talent coming and partnering effectively in light of the reality of where we find ourselves today.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Could you share us with one example of a complex procurement problem that was successfully resolved under your leadership?
Yeah, I won't call it a problem per se, but Moon to Mars, pick the Moon to Mars program, Artemis. We just recently awarded the Lunar Terrain Vehicle Services Procurement, right? So LTV is what we call it. We love our acronyms at NASA, right? So, but basically, think of a moon buggy. Think of the Apollo program moon buggy that the astronauts, suited astronauts in their spacesuits, would be driving on the lunar surface. So that was a critical piece of hardware that the Artemis program wants to be available for our crew members when we return to the moon to enable more exploration on the lunar surface. And so we embarked on a couple-year journey on acquisition strategy development. And it gets kind of what we already talked a little bit, was we had this really important piece of infrastructure assets that we wanted to have available for the lunar surface for Artemis. How do we partner effectively with our NASA customers, our program? How do we get feedback from industry on what an effective strategy could be to go acquire these services? And it was a couple-year journey where we started away, and we, through lots of feedback through industry and lots of discussions internally, adapted and tailored our ultimate strategy and RFP to what we considered to be a real win-win. And we got very robust competition, and really happy to have made 3 awards here just about a month ago, where we have 3 companies working their own designs to develop a lunar terrain vehicle that we will be able to use for our Artemis program of the future, as well as the science mission director can use it for robotic autonomous science, and these commercial providers can use it for their own commercial purposes, right? So we've really, I feel, are trying to be innovative in our strategies to accomplish multiple objectives in the most efficient, economical manner possible. And that was a challenge that we partnered effectively and with our NASA customers and our industry counterparts to get what we're really happy with today. Even though it's just awarded, very, very new award, but that was a great recent example.
Well, you are shaping the future. How does the procurement division collaborate with commercial and international partners?
Yeah, so hit on it a little bit already. Our procurement process has lots of structured interface points with industry, right? We do industry days, we do pre-proposal conferences, we do lots of requests for information, we ask for feedback to our RFPs through question and answers, right? There's all of that normal stuff. Additionally, here at the center, we're very open and collaborative. And so I've partnered with some center leadership here to help develop what we're calling acquisition rules of engagement, to where we're encouraging our requirement owners at all levels to be open and discuss technology and future requirement capabilities that we might be interested in as an agency, and that industry might be has available that could meet our need in the future. But we need to promote open conversations between government and our industry partners. And so we've been working at the center to develop a rules of engagement package to help our technical folks navigate those conversations in a way that's fair and promotes what we're trying to do here is create win-win solutions between industry and the government to do this awesome mission we get to go do. So there's a lot of intentional activity on how do we continue to collaborate with industry, and we're going to continue to do that into the future.
What role does the division play in fostering innovation through procurement?
Oh, yeah. So procurement, so we're part of an enterprise. You know, there's 10 NASA centers and there's 10 NASA procurement offices. Plus we have a virtual information technology procurement office. And so as a collective, there's a lot of knowledge within our Office of Procurement Enterprise across the nation. And OP, the Office of Procurement, recently has established the NASA Acquisition Innovation Launchpad, or as we call it, the NAIL. And it's a very intentional, strategic innovation platform where it's all about getting information, knowledge sharing, and the best ideas from our broad, diverse experience base within the enterprise of procurement, so we can share lessons learned and what works across centers. So it's no longer just the Johnson Space Center or, for example, the Marshall Space Flight Center. We've got a platform where we can share information and knowledge together and make us all better, and it's a way to be more innovative as an enterprise. So that's a huge step that was implemented last year, and we've been an active participant in it, and we've gotten some good benefits out of it. So that's a strategic thing that my boss up at NASA headquarters has implemented, and it's been a wonderful thing to kind of keep innovation on procurement at the forefront. And then another key part of that, the NAIL platform, is industry, right? There's another mechanism there where industry can provide their recommendations to where we could innovate, or they might have ideas to help improve something. So it's all about two-way street for collaboration.
Wow. In what ways is sustainability considered in the procurement process for long-term space missions?
Good question. So I take sustainability from a kind of a really, how do we do all of these amazing programs and projects supporting a successful, sustainable Moon to Mars program, right? Within limited financial constraints, within limited personnel. And so sustainability gets right to, that's a core central conversation as we are developing acquisition strategy, right? And it's effectively, how do we balance a lot of constraints? There's the technical requirements, the things that we got to go make sure we get done for protection of crew safety, protection of humans and assets. There's commercial approaches, how we can do things innovatively or differently, with the mindset of we're trying to change in some situations where we're one of many customers, right? Where we're trying to create acquisition strategy where businesses can commercialize some of these technologies and some of these systems we're developing to where they can then sell to other customers to then lower the overall cost of that service back to the agency. And it's steps like that that ultimately contribute individually to the sustainability goal of, we got to have an affordable mission that we can execute. And there's some hardware that we've got to own and operate, and then there's some hardware that we could potentially partner with industry on a services model to help potentially share into the future, right? And so that's central to ACT strategy, acquisition development, as we're partnering with our customers and our industry partners on that question. It's a challenging question.
It is. What are the future goals for the procurement division, and how do you plan to achieve those goals?
Yeah. So future goals is we've got to. I mean, we're mission first, people always, right? That's kind of at a high level. We are here at the Johnson Space Center and within the Office of Procurement as an enterprise. We're here to make the agency successful in our mission. So first and foremost, we've got to ensure we're delivering results for our program customers, for our center customers, for our enterprise customers. So that's first and foremost, is showing up. Secondly, it's the human capital challenge I mentioned, right? So for my leadership team here and the enterprise leadership team, it's how do we leverage on the human capital we have? How do we use that to train up the next generation to continue delivering the results for our program customers? And then another big piece of it is innovation. How do we continuously get better? Sharpen the saw to get better, right? Not just, this is how we've always done it. An example, this commercial service model that we've employed, starting with the commercial resupply services contract. So that's our cargo delivery to the International Space Station that we started back in 2005. And so we've been operating for close to 20 years with cargo delivery in a commercial model, and it's yielded tremendous benefits. But that model isn't copy and pasted into the future commercial service approaches. We've learned a lot from commercial resupply. We've learned a lot from commercial crew. We've learned a lot from all of these approaches along the way, and how do we continuously get better and take the best of and feedback from industry and improve, right? As we operate these agreements, we learn along the way. And so it's continuously assessing ourselves and how successful are these models and where do we need to tailor and tweak where it makes sense. So that's the focus, is innovation and continual improvement as well. So that's another primary goal as we're moving into the future.
Wow. What initiatives are in place to train and develop procurement workforce at NASA?
Yeah, so I mentioned that's one of our primary goals and objectives here locally. I have some initiatives locally that we do. We have a great, what we call our new employee cohort team. So we have a group of procurement professionals that do intentional activities to train and onboard new individuals, to do social events, to create that camaraderie and relationships and culture, right, to where they're part of the NASA family, right? So we have an intentional new employee cohort activity. We also have another group of employees that do a bunch of training. It's called our ACT team, Acquisition Career Training Team, and using feedback from our workforce on what our needs, what our training needs we need, as well as input from headquarters and others, we craft a curriculum in a fiscal year, and we go develop training and train. And we've made that training available to the enterprise through the virtual capabilities that exist. So we're training other centers with our training, and it's all about knowledge sharing and making the enterprise better. So there's a lot of initiatives at play here, and then there's a lot of on-the-job training that takes place as well.
That's good. Um, how do you see the role of procurement evolving with the future of space exploration?
Yeah, well, I see it. I mean, we play a vital central role already just based on the fact that 85% of our dollars are through contracts, right? So it's always been an important part of how NASA does its mission, and I see it remaining to be like that. And so, how we continue to get better, how we continue to innovate and do procurement more efficiently, I see opportunities in standardization across the enterprise. That's something that, as we've created this enterprise, we have seen some benefits in standardization. So, if somebody's doing procurement, if a company is bidding on an RFP at the Goddard Space Flight Center, it doesn't look completely foreign from what an RFP at the Johnson Space Center looks like. So that creates bid and proposal efficiencies for our industry counterparts that can yield savings on that side and ultimately lower barriers to competition, right? Because we can get more offers, potentially in these competitions. So there's a lot of that we've got to continue to share knowledge, and there's opportunities to get better as an enterprise through standardization that will help us be more effective, because budgets are tight as always, right? Within a big federal landscape, right? We're one agency of many. So we've got to do the best we can do with the resources we're entrusted from the nation to go execute this program. So that's our challenge, that's our job, is to continue to do more. I would say more, not with less, more with what we're getting, right? We're getting what we get, and we've got to go make the best of it to do this awesome mission we have to accomplish.
That makes perfect sense. What advice would you give to companies looking to become suppliers or contractors for NASA?
Sure. Yeah, I get that question a lot because it's really important. I would say first and foremost, get to know our small business office here locally and across the enterprise. Right, we have a office of small business programs whose job is to help new entrants get informed and to help them along that process of how to do business with the government. It's not just targeted at small business either. It's really open to small and large companies. It's open to universities. It's open to academia, right? So getting to know the people at the center that you're interested, relationships matter. So we do lots of events locally, whether it's industry forums or we have a small business council, for example, where a lot of local small businesses in this aerospace community convene to help the community be successful and help NASA be successful. So getting plugged into that small business council to build those relationships, because the reality of getting new entrants into the Johnson Space Center procurement portfolio is we've got a lot of really big contracts. I said we spent $4.7 billion almost through procurement last year. A lot of those are longer term systems development, right, contracts. So there's lots of opportunities as subcontractors, right? That's always advice, is get to know the companies that have prime contracts, build relationships with those individuals, and a lot of times you start as a subcontractor under a prime to get to know how to do the business effectively, and then you grow from there, right? And then maybe you look to go chase a prime opportunity in the future. But it all starts with relationships, and we've got a lot of resources here to help those relationships, those connections be made.
I'm familiar with the council.
Yeah, yes, you are.
Yeah. So, how do you envision the impact of procurement decisions on future space exploration missions?
Yeah, it's again central. How we're crafting acquisition strategy, where it's not just NASA in a bubble. We can't do this by ourselves, right? We gotta listen to industry, take feedback, and make sure we're crafting strategy that is long-term win-win for the agency and for our commercial providers. It's so important, right? And some of this stuff, we're trying new models. And so some of it is, back in 2005, we tried this new model called the Commercial Orbital Transportation System, like COTS. That was funded Space Act agreements with new companies at the time, like SpaceX, right? And look at what that idea back then has yielded, right? The launch market today is booming, and you can attribute it in part to this idea, this innovation back in 2005 called COTS, right? So if we don't try new things, you never know what could come of them, right? And so we have this really great opportunity to try some new things with a burgeoning economy in outer space that didn't really exist a decade ago. But low Earth orbit, there's potential there. On the lunar surface, there's future potential there. So how do we be mindful of that future potential and craft true strategy that enables businesses to capitalize on those markets, as well as the government to capitalize on the services and hardware that we need to go do our exploration goals. So partnering is key. Taking calculated risks in certain areas is key, right? And then learning what works, adjusting what may not work as well as we thought it might work, right? And continuing to get better. That's vital to success.
So, Brad, this is one of the first holographic interviews. I believe this is your first one.
Yes.
People may be watching this as Asian documentary about the first interviews with NASA holographic interviews. And people may be watching this on the moon or Mars, literally in 20, 30 years from now. What message do you give to these people watching this interview in 20, 30 years from now? And also, what message do you give to future procurement directors in 20, 30 years from now?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to think about that reality, and that reality is coming, right? It's gonna be a reality. It's amazing. I think the next 10 years, what low Earth orbit could look like is pretty incredible, really incredible. So I would just say, high level advice is, nothing is impossible, right? The fact that I'm having an interview with you through this technology is mind blowing. When you first showed me this technology years ago, it was kind of hard to fathom. And where you've come, it's amazing, right? It's incredible technology, and the application that this technology can bring to our operations, right, in outer space, and where you're applying in other ways. It's just an example of nothing is impossible, right? So we've got a lot of smart minds out there, the next generation of innovators, right? So nothing is impossible. So it's kind of looking at the future. Where are opportunities? Where do opportunities really exist? And trying to figure out solutions and technology to go capitalize to fill that gap. There's a lot of needs out there and gaps. So not just looking at how we did things yesterday, but like how to remake the future with technology, right? And so it's exciting to think what else is going to come, into the future. And for procurement specifically, what I'll tell our workforce is, there's no such thing as a bad idea, right? There's not great ideas, right? But all ideas on a table, and we've got to be open. We've got to talk about them and think through what could work, what couldn't work, because you're not going to innovate if you're not open to the state of the possible, right? And so creating this open mindset, right? So it gets on the technology side of where nothing's impossible, and it goes to the business process side as well. How do we reimagine potentially normal business process things that we've been doing forever? Let's reimagine that, and how can we get more efficient on that? And it's only going to make us all better business partners with our private companies, and it's going to just kind of yield goodness for the future. So it's being open-minded, and saying yes, being willing as a leader to figure out a process to discuss things and take smart risk, right? That's what it comes down to, right? Is being comfortable taking smart risk on innovation where you can to help push that change forward. So,
amen for that. Brad, thank you so much for the interview. It has been a great interview. Thank you for your time. And everyone, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and watch us next week.
Thank you, Fernando.